Welcome everyone to the first Seal of Biliteracy webinar for 2025 entitled Using the End of Year Data Form to Track and Report SEAL Earner Progress. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Candace Black and I'm the World Language Associate in the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages of the New York State Education Department. And I'm pleased to introduce to you today my colleague, Minxiao Zhang, who is an educational specialist in our office and is a wonderful colleague to have with regards to world languages and the Seal of Biliteracy. And so you got an email from her regarding this webinar, and you'll see her email more often as she continues to process these. Minxiao is also going to be monitoring our question document, which I'm going to be showing you in just a second. So on the left, you'll see a digital badge. So we have a digital badge certification system. When you attend a webinar or when you watch the recording of a webinar and take a post-assessment, you get one of the badges denoting that you have completed this. So you'll get this following the webinar. We encourage you to display this in any way you feel appropriate, whether it's social media, your website, or your email signature to promote the Seal of Biliteracy and your own professional learning. So as indicated, we have provided for you in the chat, and we will continue to do so, the link to the new form, which you can see is up here in green. And we've also placed both a copy of the form and some additional materials that you'll find helpful from this webinar in a Google Share folder. That link is also in the chat. Now, we've also put a QR code here just in case you want to use this. One of the things that you're going to find in the chat is a copy of the PDF slides so that you have access to this information in case you need to train others in your district or your region. Now, we do have a good number of people that are here today, and we appreciate you taking the time to do so. So we ask that if you do have questions, that you enter them into the Google Doc that you see here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit escape really quick. So just give me a second. I'm going to capture this particular link, and I'm going to put it right into the chat. And that way, if you have a question, we ask that you put it there. And then what will happen is Minxiao will monitor that question catcher, and she will ask those questions so that everybody can get the answer. So that is now in the chat for you. Okay, now a special disclaimer before we start is for New York City district schools. So we're going to first define that. A New York City district school is a school that is part of the New York City public school system, but is not a charter school or a non-public school like a private or independent. So why am I telling you this? Because this entire webinar is about this new end of year data form and some tricks and tips to help you in the process. So schools across the state submit their individual end of year data forms to our office as part of this process. But New York City works directly through the Office of Multilingual Learners in the New York City public system. So if you are a New York City district school, this information will still be helpful, but please know that you will work with the Office of Multilingual Learners to collect that data, and they will submit the end of year data form on your behalf. Just to reiterate, charter schools and non-public schools in the New York City area are not included in that definition, and they do submit their end of year data forms directly to NYSED the way all other schools across the state do. So our goals for today's session include the following. You'll be able to explain the purpose of the form, where to find it, the general time frame in which you're going to submit it, and then what a school receives when they submit a correctly completed form. You'll be able to explain why we don't want you to alter the gray columns, and you'll be able to identify at least 2 changes to the new form. There are 6. And you'll be able to explain one way in which schools can use the school information tab of that form, as well as how they can benefit from tracking potential candidates prior to senior year. And we'll end with you being able to identify who your local support contact is for the seal. And I even see some of them online today. So let's start with, what is the form? This is a spreadsheet that seal coordinators complete annually for each school that has successful seal earners. So the important thing to remember is you only submit it when you have successful seal earners that are graduating. If you don't have any seal candidates, you don't submit it. Now, the purpose of the form is for schools to track and report information on students who earn the seal each year, because students have to earn 3 points in each language in order to earn the seal. You can find the seal and the new version of the seal form in several places. Number one, it's on our seal website. And remember, you're going to get a copy of these slides, so all of these links will work for you. And on the website, it's under a section called Required Forms for the schools implementing the seal. But you can also find it in 2 other places. We have a web page on the site called Seal End of Your Data Form. And we also put a copy in the handouts folder for this webinar. I have removed the old versions of the form, so this will be the only one that is available. So, I think I went a little bit too far, but that's okay. I am going to find the correct form. Oh, you know what? We'll just go forward. So there is a window to submit the end of your data form. So you have to submit it between 2 particular dates. And I hope I didn't delete the page, but I may have. So I'm just scrolling through to see if I can locate it really quick. Oh, here it is. I accidentally put it as slide 19. So let me fix that so that we are going in the correct order. All right. So when is the end of your data form submitted? It used to be that we had a hard and fast deadline to submit the form, and we really like to be responsive to schools. And we heard back that that just didn't work for all of the schools. So a few years ago, we instituted instead a window during which schools needed to submit this form. And that window is May 5th through July 15th. You can submit that form at any time during that window that will work for you. And we often get the question, well, why is there a window instead of just a deadline? Well, NYSED is providing the Seal of Biliteracy stickers for schools to put on the diplomas, as well as medallions for students to wear at graduation. And if we have a singular deadline, that really condenses the process for reviewing those forms, approving them, and then sending out those materials. So having a window within which you can submit these forms gives flexibility to schools, and it spaces out this distribution process for us. When you submit a correctly completed end of your data form, you get an official seal to put on the student's diploma. It looks very much like what you see on this certificate. You get a medallion, which you can see here on a lanyard for the students to wear at graduation. And we also make available online certificates for schools who wish to print them out and put students' name on them. So let's talk about what's generally included on the end of your data form. It has the student's NYSSB number, which is an official number issued by the New York State Education Department and is unique to every student in our state, even if they transfer schools or districts. This is contrasted with a school's internal ID number, which is often much shorter. It's usually around 6 numbers, whereas the NYSED number tends to be much longer, 9 or 10 digits. In addition to the NYSSB number, you'll find demographic information such as gender, race, ethnicity, when they graduate, whether they're over 21 or not, and their ELS status. Finally, on the form, you're going to find the points that students earned in each language to satisfy the requirements of the seal. Now, what we don't ask you for on the end of your data form is any personally identifiable information. So you would not submit student first or last names. You're not going to submit your internal ID numbers. And you don't submit actual grades or actual scores on assessments for students. You do tell us whether they've met the requirement, but we don't get those actual grades. So NYSED collects and tracks data annually in order to be able to make sure that every SEAL candidate has met the criteria to earn the SEAL, to support schools as their programs grow, as well as to analyze the growth of the overall statewide program. So we're going to take a look right now at the actual end of year data form. Before I open this up, I want to let you know that the form consists of two tabs. The school information tab is where you're going to put the name of your SEAL contact to whom I should send the SEAL and medallions, as well as the address that that person is at. The end of your data form tab is where you're actually going to enter the student level data. So let's just take a moment. And if you're there on your own screen, you may want to open up the new form from one of the ways that we showed you, or if you prefer, you can look at my screen. Inshao, can you confirm that you can see the school information tab of the end of your data form on the screen?
Yes, it's on the screen.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So as you can see on the bottom, there are two forms. I'm showing you the school information form just very quickly, and there's only one change to this area. In the orange section, you enter the district and school information, where the medallion should be sent, and the contact information for the person that can be contacted following the end of school, should there be any kind of question. There's a signature section, and generally that's the SEAL of Biliteracy Coordinator that submits the form. And it does say building administrator designee, but that simply means that the coordinator has let the building administrator know that the form has been submitted. The bottom half of the form is really for your own purposes. They're automatically calculated fields that summarize the different students that earned the SEAL by various factors. So you can see you'll have the total number of SEAL candidates, how many candidates earn the SEAL in 1 to 5 world languages in addition to English, the gender breakdown, the ethnic breakdown, the L status breakdown. Now on the bottom, there are some error code sections. So we found that there are some common error codes that happen. And this is an automatically calculated section where you'll see an error code if there is one. So on this blank form, we haven't filled out the district name and school name above, and you'll see that there's an error there. But if I scroll up and I just put in a fictitious school district name, we'll put school district, and then we'll put the name of the school, school name. If we scroll down to that error code section, we'll see that the error code has now changed to field correctly filled in. This is not a change. This existed last year, but it's just a reminder that these are very useful error codes to make sure that your form is correctly filled out before you submit it. So let's move on to the end of your data form so that you can see it looks very, very similar to last year. And we're going to go over the 6 major changes, but I just wanted to show it to you in case you weren't familiar with it. So I encourage you, if you have 2 screens or the ability to split the screen, to perhaps keep a copy of this open so that you can follow along as we're going through the slides. So with that, I'm going to go back to my slide presentation. And let's talk about the color coding really quick. Now, the color coding has not changed. It is the same as last time, but this is a helpful sheet to have so that you know. So there are 3 white columns, and we'll go in order. And those 3 white columns are optional columns where you can put the student name and any internal student ID number. So I'm going to escape and go back to that form so that you can actually see what those look like. So over here, these first 3 columns have the word optional in red. So why do we provide these? Because that NYSSB number that you have to put in for students is not very user-friendly. It's not something that's readily accessible, usually in school management systems. And it's often much more helpful for coordinators to actually put in student names. The reason we mark it as optional is because we don't want schools sending personally identifiable information via email or to NYSED. So this is only for your use. We do ask that you delete these first 3 columns in the copy that you send to NYSED. Now, the next color in the form is gray, and this is a really important color. Any columns or fields that are gray are auto-calculate fields. We ask that you do not edit any of these because they contain formulas that are very helpful to you and very helpful to us to make sure that the students actually met the criteria. One of the big changes this year is that you will have the ability to make changes to the form, but we want to let you know that we're asking you not to edit the gray fields or to change the formulas because that will impede our ability to process these forms in a timely manner. If the forms are submitted and these gray fields are in fact deleted or edited, we'll end up sending the form back to you to kind of repopulate them because we need these formulas. The remaining colors, again, have not changed, but just for your own edification, blue is our demographic data, and I'll open that back up again so that you can see it. It's the number, the gender, the race, etc. You have an orange section that is for L status. That's whether the student is a current or former English language learner, or if they're not, but they have a home language in English or another language. Your tan or brown columns are your criteria. Those haven't changed. And then your green column, that is the name of your world language in which the student's getting the seal. Now you'll see there's one other color that I haven't talked about yet, and that's this pink or reddish color. And I want to make sure, although this hasn't changed, that you understand what this is. When something is pink or red, that is a color that indicates that either information has not been entered or it's been entered incorrectly. And this is a signal to you as coordinators to take notice. So for instance, we don't have any students in this form. So the English criteria met column is by definition no. But if we were to go ahead and put in some criteria, so I'm just going to put in a couple of things, you'll see that not only did that raw points section change and the points earned, but that no went to yes. So I know that that row is good for that student for English. Okay, so we've gone over the color coding. Let us dive into both the hacks as well as the changes. So one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from schools is that the form is quite wide. It contains a lot of columns. And for most students, you're only going to use the first set of columns for earning the seal in English and one other world language. But we do have students who earn the seal in more than one world language plus English, and that necessitates sets of columns for each of those world languages. So if you're having difficulty being able to see the names of the students and the column headings, we recommend that you use the freeze option from the view menu, which I'm going to demonstrate for you, so that you freeze that first row and first column. That way they're always displayed on the screen, no matter how far over or down you scroll. And so I'm going to get rid of the current freeze that I have on here to show you how to do it. Okay, so here's my form, right? And I put in a student name, I'll do the fake name right there. I'm entering information in here. And then by the time I'm over to the English criteria, you can see on the left, I've now lost that student's name, and it's very hard for me to line that up. The same would be true if I have more than 16 rows. If I have 30 students, now I'm down on row 30, and I can no longer see the column headings. So the way you do this is very similar in Excel or in this version of Google. You simply click on the column that you want to appear, and anything before it will appear. You pull down the View menu and choose Freeze. And now you have a couple of options. You have rows and columns. I want to see columns A, B, C, and I want to see row 1 on every window I have. So I'm simply going to go freeze. I want to see the first row, and I'm going to repeat that process. View, freeze, and I want to see up to column C. And now you'll see I have this nice split so that if I scroll over, I am not going to lose that first row or those first 3 columns. Okay, so moving right along. Change number 1. We really listen to schools when they tell us they need something. So many of you are Google schools, and we did not have a Google Sheets version of the end of the year data form. Now we have it. In fact, the one I've been showing you when I've been modeling this is our Google Sheets version. And you can see that you don't have to convert it. There are 2 in the folder, and one just has this name, and the other one has the name plus says Google Sheets in parentheses. This is available in the handouts folder and on the website. So I'm hoping that's going to be a real big help to a lot of schools who use this. Change number 2. So this one I'm both excited and nervous for. I mentioned this earlier, but this is the first year that we are providing the form in an unlocked version. So let me go back to the sample form. In the past, all of the gray fields, these auto-calculate fields here, they were all locked down, which meant you couldn't change any of them. And while you don't need to change them, having the sheet locked down really prevented coordinators from being able to manipulate the data in a way that they found useful. So what do you need to know? The form is unlocked. You do have the capacity to make changes. You can see there's a formula up here. We ask you not to change the gray fields, but otherwise you can manipulate this form in any way you want to, including doing things like sorting students by name or by number, or by students, for instance, who have completed all the criteria to earn the seal. Keep in mind, please don't change the gray columns, because if the formulas are gone, we're going to send that end of year data form back to you and ask you to copy and paste your data into a new form that already has those formulas in it. Okay, another hack. People have said, well, we have a lot of candidates. We just don't have 3, 4, or 5. We've got 100. And it's really time consuming to re-enter the information that we already have on our student management system. And so a hack that we have for you is that when you request the data on potential SEAL candidates, such as their ELA Regent score, their grade in 11th or 12th grade English, their grade on an AP exam, ask your person who's giving you this data, whether it's the head of counseling or your district data coordinator, to provide it to you in a spreadsheet. They can work with this data and often export it to Excel. And then what you're going to do is just copy and paste it into the form. But here's the hack. If you have a spreadsheet and you are just doing a normal paste into the end of your data form, you're going to end up pasting not only the values, but you're going to be changing the look of the form, the colors and things like that, the fonts. It's a much better option to use what's called paste values. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you, because this only pastes the actual contents of the cell. It doesn't change the formatting of the end of the year data form. And I have a little cutout here. These are the icons that you see when you try to cut and paste something. It's a little clipboard. And the paste is just a regular icon with a clipboard and a piece of paper in front of it. The paste value option has the same clipboard and paper, but it's got a 1, 2, 3 next to it. So let's take a look at what this looks like here. I'm going to, let me put in some fake information into here really quick. Okay. All right. So I have to put in 10 numbers, 9, 10. All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to do two things. I'm copying this fake information and I'm going to open up our data form. And if I were to, let me just make sure I'm copying the right one. Okay. If I were to just do a regular paste, I'm going to click on this cell and I'm going to hit paste. All right. Look at what it did. It changed some of the items. No, I did it in the wrong cell. But at any rate, once you have that in the memory, what you're going to do is you're going to choose paste special values only. And this will avoid changing any of the formatting of the original sheet. So hopefully that hack was helpful for you. All right, change number 3. We have added a column. Those of you who are familiar with the end of year data form knew that it started with only one gray column that said total number of, total number of seals earned. And so we've added a column that is a sister column. We have total number of seals earned, but also total number of seals anticipated. And this is just to help you distinguish between students who have completed all the work for the seal or who are still waiting to complete some of the criteria. Now, we also talked about what are some common pitfalls. So I've highlighted 4 of them for you on this form, just to make sure you know how to deal with them. The first one is one we've already said before, so I won't harp on it anymore after this one. But the common pitfalls is attempting to alter the gray shaded cells. They contain formulas, again, that are automatically calculated whether a student has met the seal or not. So why is this important? So here's what we're getting sometimes. So on this form where it has total numbers of seals earned, if the coordinator put in all of the appropriate information and they still didn't see that gray column of total number seals earned, they would get frustrated and say, oh, well, something's wrong with the form. But in fact, something isn't wrong with the form. The problem is that the criteria has not been earned. So I'm entering in some fake information. Notice that those 2 columns, did the world language criteria, was it met, have changed to yes now. And if I scroll back over, you can see that this total number of seals earned is now 1. Now let's enter in another student. And again, we can just put in kind of fake information. Doesn't really matter right now. And you're going to see what it looks like when we put in a criteria that the student is attempting, but they haven't actually done it yet. And that's going to be our huge change of the 6 that we are doing this year. And so let me just enter in these next 2 criteria. And this will also illustrate that big change. Okay, so when you take a look at this form, you see one student who has earned the seal and another student who hasn't earned it yet because the seals are anticipated. Well, as we look across that row 3, we can find out why. So they've got a point for the ELA and Regents for an 80 or above. But they haven't done their culminating project yet. So the coordinator here has entered an A as anticipated, meaning the student is anticipated to complete a culminating project, but at the time that this was entered on the form, they haven't done it yet. And the form knows that because of that, the seal criteria has not been met in English. Okay, so moving on to our next big change, or just little change for this one. We heard back from some schools regarding the collection of racial designations, that the students, when they were filling out an application or communicating with the SEAL coordinator, didn't feel like any of the federal race designations applied to them. And I apologize that Asian, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander appear to be on two separate lines. Those will be on the same one when you see the form. But we added the words some other race in case the student preferred to have an additional category where they didn't feel like they fit into any of the others. And this is a simple pull-down menu that you'll use. A reminder of something we talked about before. If you do end up using those white columns we talked about for student names and numbers, remember to delete them before you submit, because that's PII, or personally identifiable information. We do recommend, though, as a hack, that you save a copy of this form with student names for your own records, because this will make looking up information a lot easier if you can do so by student name instead of that long NYSSB number. All right, the fifth of our 6 changes is that the age column has been simplified. If you remember the form from last year, there was a column that was called, as of September of the current year, the student is less than or equal to 21 years of age. Now, so this requires you to do a little math problem while you're filling out the form, and that less than or equal then sign proved to be confusing. So we have renamed the column as age at graduation. And instead of answering yes or no to a less than or equal question, you're simply going to use a drop-down menu to select the student is under 21 or over 21. Now, the vast majority, probably about 10,500 of the 10,500 and whatever students that earned the seal are in fact under 21. So you may ask, why is this even needed? Well, there's a particularity about how students are reported on the NYSED data portal when they are over 21. And the issue is that your data coordinator is not going to be able to put in the code for the seal of biliteracy if a student is over 21. And therefore, when I run a report on my end, I'm going to see the students over 21 on the end of your data form, but I'm not going to see them on the NYSED portal. And that's going to create a discrepancy in which I would call the school and say, I don't see these 2 students on your data portal. But if you tell us that ahead of time on the end of your data form, then we don't have to call the school. We know why they don't show up. A similar issue happens for August graduates. So you may not know this, but when you put an August graduate on your end of your data form, we're able to send you the seal and medallion. But in terms of how that's reported by your district office, those students actually get reported as part of the following year's data reporting process. So again, it's a way for us to identify discrepancies without having to bother you over the summer. Okay, here is the big change. If you take only one thing away from this webinar, this is what I want you to take away, other than don't change the gray fields. So if you remember the prior form from last year, there was a column that was called criteria already met or anticipated. And it was a single column where you just indicated the student has completed all the criteria I've listed, or at least one of those criteria is anticipated. And we do this because we want to make sure that we have that final list of who has done the seal by July 15th. The problem with that is when a student was marked anticipated, we had no way of knowing which of the criteria were anticipated and which were completed. By the same token, the coordinator's ability to use the form to track that progress was impeded because they couldn't distinguish between what was anticipated and what was completed. So we got rid of that column, and instead, for each criteria column, instead of just checking an X when it was completed, we've now given you a drop-down menu where you can choose between X, which means completed, or A, which means this criterion is anticipated, but not yet completed. And the formulas in the various gray cells that I talked to you about now more accurately calculated how many points have been earned, but also allow the coordinator to identify anticipated criteria because it shows up in red, and that's a signal to them that the criteria needs to be updated. Okay, again, why is this beneficial? Because now you as the coordinator can look at this student right here and say, they've completed the ELA Regents with an 80, they've gotten an 85 in their English classes in 11th and 12th grade, but they still need to complete their culminating project. Okay, so I think one last pitfall. Just a reminder that we do have 2 approved assessment columns for English and 2 approved assessment columns for world languages. Well, what does this mean? Students can actually earn up to 2 points for assessments in English and up to 2 points for assessments in world languages. They get 1 point per assessment, and they have to achieve at least the minimum required score. We do have some coordinators who think that they need to enter the same assessment in each column, and I'm going to show you in just a second. And the truth is, though, you only need to enter it once, which will mean if a student's only taking 1 assessment, that you're going to have that second column blank. So let's take a look at the form and how that might work. And I'll make this a little bit bigger so that you can see this. Okay. So let's say that this first student on line 2 here, in addition to doing this other criteria, maybe they took the Apple exam in English. So I would select Apple here, right? And you're just going to indicate whether that is completed or anticipated. We're going to say completed here. So you don't need to enter the Apple again there because you wouldn't take it twice. You notice when I've done that, that's now throwing off the points. Let me take out the other criteria so you can see how that actually works with the points. Okay. So if we were to enter the Apple twice, you'll see that the form is going to calculate those points incorrectly. But instead, if we only enter it once, okay, now we are going to have the correct number of points. It is possible, and actually pretty frequent, that students will take 2 English assessments. So maybe the student took AP English Language in their junior year, and they took AP English Literature. And that would be a reason of why you would use both of those assessment columns. The same is true for world languages. Okay, the final change for this form, I told you there were 6. It's not going to impact the vast majority of you, but we have added a set of columns for a 5th world language in addition to English. And yes, we're not doing this because we wanted to. We did this because we actually had a student last year who completed the Seal of Biliteracy in English and 5 different world languages. I put her picture there just to honor her. It's Helena Kottman from Haldane High School. And so her SEAL coordinator had to utilize these columns last year. All right. Last pitfall that I want to mention to you is that green column. It's called World Languages, and I'm just going to highlight it for you here for a second. This is actually a column that needs to be filled in. Many people think that this is just a header that's separating the world language columns from the English columns. But actually, you're going to enter in the name of the world language in which the student is completing this seal. So you're not going to leave this blank, and you're not going to enter English into this field because this field is called world language other than English. Now, why? Because every student has to complete the criteria in English because it's a seal of biliteracy. So let me just show you this column here. You see this green column in column Z here? It says first world language. You're going to enter the name of the English language other than English. Here I've entered Spanish and Italian. So make sure don't leave that blank and don't put English here because English is not a world language other than English. You enter the English part in this first tan section. All right, we are getting to the end here. So how can you as a coordinator use this form to track progress towards the seal over multiple years? And why on earth would you want to do that anyway? Well, we recommend that coordinators raise awareness about the seal of biliteracy through classroom presentations, school counselor meetings, after-school events like open house, as well as meetings with students to raise their awareness about the seal of biliteracy. And so ideally, you're not waiting until senior year to do this, but rather thinking about making it an earlier process of raising awareness, even all the way to 9th grade. What you could do is you could actually create a copy of the end of your data form for each graduation cohort. So I might label this year's as the end of your data form 2025, because that's when they're graduating. And I would track those students in that form. But I also can get data on this year's juniors. And I want to be able to tell them, hey, if you still speak your home language other than English, or if you are still going to take Spanish in 12th grade, I've got a program there for you. And it's a nice way to be able to make sure that you are identifying all possible students that are eligible and to reach out to them and encourage them over multiple years to pursue this award. It also makes your job a lot easier come reporting time because you would not have to scramble to get that information. So in closing, I just want to make sure that I've identified a couple of resources for you, and then we'll open it up for questions. On our website, we've got a handbook, a Seal of Biliteracy Guidance Toolkit, and we've got handouts for various stakeholders, and even a wakelet that is a collection of authentic resource sites put together by various embassies that work with us in world languages other than English. The handbook has the criteria to earn the seal, as well as approved assessments and frequently asked questions. The guidance toolkit is a month-by-month guide, especially for new schools, on how to get started with the seal and run those Seal of Biliteracy committee meetings, and it's organized by topic. You can see these here. We also have a professional learning series for the Seal of Biliteracy. These are the ones we had from this past year as well. On the bottom right, we have Nancy Biner's most recent webinar on the culminating project. These are digital badges, like I had previously stated, but they're also, so that you know, the webinar recordings are available on the website. So you can watch these recordings on demand when it's convenient for you, and you can even earn CTLA or attendance credit. Now for today, you don't need to do anything other than be present. But if you want credit for watching a video recording, you would take the online post-assessment, which is a 10-question multiple choice quiz at the end of the recording. And if you get at least a 7 out of 10, a certificate will automatically be emailed to you. I wanted to highlight that this year we are working with 2 authors who are the preeminent researchers in the Seal of Biliteracy, Dr. Kristen Davin and Dr. Amy Heineke. They're pictured here. They are running a book study on the book that they authored called Promoting Multilingualism in Schools, a Framework for Implementing the Seal of Biliteracy. Now, why am I talking to you about this since the book study is almost half over? Well, because the first year that we offer a book study, we offer it with a smaller group and the authors lead the book study. But in year 2 of the book study, those people who were trained by the authors this year will lead smaller book study groups across the state. And so next year, 25-26, we will be offering this same Seal of Biliteracy book study. It'll be run by teams of facilitators that have worked directly with the authors. So look out for that in March. You'll get a free book if you participate, mailed directly to you. You'll get up to 27 hours of CTLE for attending once-a-month meetings of an hour and a half after school from September to May. I also want to highlight that we have some wonderful digital badges for SEAL schools. So if you didn't know this, your school has already earned these badges. You can find these on our Google Drive, and I will, while we're answering questions, I will make sure I find that link for you. You have badges for the SEAL coordinator, badges for the school in terms of the number of years that they have offered it. And there's also some special milestone badges, like a school that has offered it 5 years or more, or a school that's had candidates who have earned the SEAL in 2 or more world languages in addition to English. Some schools print these out on banners or display them, put them on communications. It's just a fun way to celebrate your achievements. Now, you may have learned about this webinar from the SEAL Forum. If you don't know what this is a voluntary group of SEAL coordinators that meet once a month via Zoom after school. And this month's meeting happens to be tomorrow from 3:30 to 4:30. If you are interested, it's a wonderful way to get advanced information on what's coming down the pike with the Seal of Biliteracy. But even better, we have a Q&A session. We have breakout rooms where you can ask other SEAL coordinators what they are doing to overcome certain challenges or unique solutions that they've found. So if you're interested, you'll find the join link both on our website and on the slides. So my last pitch before we open the question and answer is, in addition to myself and my colleague Wing Xiao, you have local help available in your region for the Seal of Biliteracy. So wherever you are located on this map, you have a designated individual that works at one of our RBIRNs, which stands for Regional Bilingual Education Resource Network. And these people are specially trained in assisting schools with the Seal of Biliteracy. So I encourage you to locate your region and who your representative might be. You can find their contact information right on the RBIRN site, but you can also reach out to me and I will be happy to connect the two of you. So with that, I think we did a good job with our goals for today.